Hey,
Hey, Gianni, how are
how are
you?
I'm okay. I'm okay. Yourself?
I'm good, better.
Yeah.
We're preparing to open the school, so a lot of work here in Chicago for us.
Yeah. I definitely want to hear a lot about that. But I just want to say, like, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank
And
you for having me.
I want people to learn from you. I want to learn from you. But it's also like during this time, it's been so tough, and like I get all this anxiety during this time, and I basically live by myself for the most part. My roommate, he's working now. He has a job where he's able to work. So I spend a lot of time, sitting home by myself, and just with everything going on in the world, it's tough to deal with things when you don't have anyone to talk to.
That's
So I've
true.
I've been doing these live chats almost daily, not just to like give people an opportunity to learn, but also just for my own mental well-being, and giving myself a chance to let someone else talk or learn from them, and take bits and pieces from everyone and try to make myself better in a way. These have been great for me, so I'm excited to learn from you and hear more about you. So
That's
once again, thank
awesome.
you. Yeah,
That's like a great way to, to stay just like stay connected, right? Even
yeah,
though you're by yourself.
yeah,
Yeah, it's very important. Like I feel like this time was really eye-opening in this matter. Like how important it is for us to connect and like the human interactions, So this is like a one of the big reasons why we're here. I believe. So
yeah.
thank
And
you for inviting me.
of course, and it's funny even for me. And I'll get to asking you stuff, but even for me, like I noticed that I'm not the most social person. I feel I can usually keep to myself and be all right with that. But it's funny, this like extended period of time of isolation has really gotten to me, where it's bothered me more, to the point where I'm like, man, I want to talk to people. I want to hear from other people. I just don't want to hear the voices in my head all the time. And I'm sure
Exactly.
that's something that everybody feels, as well.
Yeah, especially like in this time, like we're just forced to be inside, sometimes forced to be with someone that we don't get along very well. So it's a time to really, go inside and find the purpose why we're here. I feel like, and sometimes when we're by ourselves, like we have like a lot, and I'm a person that I'm by myself a lot too, and I always like think about like a lot of stuff, and sometimes we put a lot of pressure in ourselves in life, like like in our lives, and it's good to have someone just like to have other people around that will give you just a lift on the time you feel like, man, because I feel like we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and being like an athlete and a competitor sometimes, because that's like the way we keep going, like just like putting pressure and getting more, going further in life.
Mm,
And when we're like not able to fully be ourselves, like I think we have the tendency of like, man, because we're not like in our usual territory, right? We are like active and we're doing like a lot of stuff, but this is really the time where we got to think about just like thinking about like a life in general.
yeah, yeah, of course. So how's everything been by you? What's been going on? What have your days been like during this whole time? Tell me about it.
So pretty much staying active. I feel exercise is really like something that's keeping everybody sane at this time, and we really know how important it is to get to exercise and keep exercise in our lives. So I've been like trying to just like keep a routine with my exercise.
Mm,
Talking to my personal trainer, and he's helping me whenever because we like, for a lot of people, they're limited in the just like what the resources they can use, like they don't have weights at home, so just like being able to exercise using your body and like
yeah,
whatever you have at home, because we can do like a hell of a workout if we want, and if
we
we have
can.
like right, if we have the
Yeah,
right guidance, someone that will guide you to like what you need, like, or even like a not doing the same thing every day, because you know, we are doing like a base pretty much like at home, like doing the same stuff every day. It's good to have like a, yes, it's good to have a routine, but it's also the time to do like a, something different. Then you don't go crazy doing everything like the same stuff. So I've been like exercising, just like doing catch up like with the regular work. I feel like I've been working more this time. I don't know for
Hmm.
other people, but I really feel like, and I talk to other people too. I don't know if like for you is the same and for the people here, but I feel like I've been working more now with this like a live classes, you know,
Hmm.
because every class you really have to put your whole energy there. You have to exercise with your students, and like that's like how I normally do. Like I always like I put myself into the class, and like even like a not like a the online, because I was not like a big person like doing like the online stuff. And that's
Yeah.
like something the quarantine was like good for me, because I had to like now force myself to do this other stuff. uh, but just like I've been working more in this matter, like just like every class you participate, you really put 100% with your students, and you really have to like you know, because I feel like if for them is like if you do the exercise, it's like a bigger motivation. They feel like empowered, like oh yes, like she's doing, I will do too. So
Yeah.
I've been just a lot of like doing like a lot of exercise, being active, and just like trying to stay out of the media just a little bit, because we've seen like a lot of stuff, and stuff is like right here by me, you know, like when the riots start, we had to pretty much go to the school, see if everything was okay. We
Hmm.
had like a threat of people coming in, and it was crazy. But just like trying to stay out of like the media a little bit, just to clear, because it's not only the physical part, it's like the mental part is like as important as the physical part for everything, right? If you like
Absolutely.
if you're going to a competition, and if you're in great shape, but if you don't have the right mindset, if you're not thinking the right way, you might end up like losing.
Yeah.
So like our mentality and how we deal with things, and how we like the when we allow things from outside come to your world, right? That might be like a problem. So I try to just minimize like the things I see, to not get caught into like a too much negativity, you
Yeah.
know. So
I feel like it's important to know what's going on to an extent, but it's important to get away from it at the same time too, because I've been reading this book, and it's just talking about, how negative energy, if you just let it, from the outside, if you have like outside media, if you listen to certain music with bad lyrics that give you negative energy, it affects your mood, it affects how you feel, So I feel like it's really important to, it doesn't have to be positive, but it has to be more like neutral thinking. I feel that's important. It's funny, even like I did these as well, because my parents, they're home and they're watching the news, and my dad would call me all upset about all this stuff that's going on, and
yes,
we made a deal. I'm like, okay, whenever we talk on the phone, we're not gonna we've been talking about stuff, but we won't talk about it to an extent. We're gonna find something positive to talk about, something different outside of all the issues that we're dealing with. That leads to better conversations. And also, I do this to distract them so they don't go on the news during this time.
that's true.
So I feel like that's super important to try to, do our best to keep away from negativity. Of course, there's things that we need to be aware of, but
Exactly.
but to an extent, I feel. And I like what you said before, like how you feel like you've been more active during this time. It's probably not something all these different things that you're doing is probably not something you'd be able to do if life was normal, right?
Exactly. Yes. I feel like a lot of people, we had to change, we had to reinvent ourselves in many ways. Business owners, like just to keep the business alive. And I feel like it's not only like, okay, guys, we're going to freeze all memberships and just like apply for the, you know, like the loans. It's just like because for me, this is like my way of living. Like this is my job, but also like the only thing I do for a living. And I love what I do. So I want to provide the best service as possible to my students. So it's not only saying, okay, guys, like during this time, you guys are not able to train. So we're going to close the school and that's it. And before we're not like as big and into like, you know, the videos and like just like a teaching online. We're
Yeah.
more kind of like a present, you know, like a being present with the students. But once we started doing this, we actually had, you know, like a very good feedback. And I feel like the students, they value the work we put in because we've been just recreating ourselves, like we were talking before, just going there, doing the classes with them, making notes like from the class. So let's say thinking about like a movement, let's say a series of movement where we can develop drills they can do solo, you know. And this is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like a studying jiu-jitsu in a different level. And if you
Yeah.
think this way, it's like you putting your jiu-jitsu also in a different level.
Hmm.
And if you start this mentality as a beginner, you know, like because most of people's journey, once they start thinking about jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu is very addictive. So once you start, you want to do more and more. And but we don't think about but I feel like when we start thinking about this development of jiu-jitsu, like how to connect the positions, is more when you get like to a higher level. Let's
Hmm.
say purple, brown, like you start like to thinking more deeply into the positions.
Yes.
And if you can just like develop something like this, just like the body language for the students, just something that in this time they can still work. I feel like that's something very big in their life and something that I didn't have in my time, but now they can, you know, take advantage. So it's something like, you know, it's like a more work. Yes, you have to think more and you have to maybe like every week you have to think about, you know, plan the week and plan the kind of like the structure of the class. But in like in a another extent, I feel like they're getting so much out of this time, and they feel, you know, like they want to support because like no, I want to like continue like to I want to keep my membership because what you guys have been providing to my life is something just beyond jiu-jitsu. It's
Yeah.
not only like a, you know, like the techniques in this time, but it's just like the getting together, the family, the community. And it's like, you know, like I said, more work, but also like the rewards are much bigger as well.
Yeah.
And the lessons you can take these times are also, you know, incredible. So
It makes you like appreciate the people that you have and what you have, you know, when you don't have it at this time, you know. And it's funny how you can actually like bring a team together and bring people together when they're apart during this time, you know, because you kind of, I don't know, I almost feel like you can almost take it for granted a little bit when things are normal and things are kind of just given to you and things are kind of just the way they are. But when you're put in a situation where you don't have the luxury of seeing your friend in person every day, you want to
yes,
keep that unity however you can. And I can imagine this time has almost been like good for you in a way where it's where you know you say you weren't much of like you know you didn't do stuff online. And maybe you don't want to after this is over. Maybe you're like, screw that, I don't want to do this. But at least you know that it's there. At least you know that
yes.
you know what to do if that option ever comes up, if you ever want to expand on that. So you can say you've improved on that aspect, and it's always kind of like another option to work on, even when things come back to normal.
That's very true, and I definitely like a feel it's like a part that I was missing, that I always like pushed a little bit in my life. Like I will do this, you know, like people ask me like, oh, you know, I want to learn more from you. You should have more videos, but I'm always kind of like you know involved in other projects and just like
Hmm.
trying to work on different things. And now that's like I've been forced to you know develop this other side. I feel like man, I've been missing out. I could do like, but I also think everything happens in the right time, and just like maybe this
Yeah.
was like just a way that the universe like I see like you know like you're missing this, so you should like explore more this part, you know. So I
Yeah.
don't take it like oh I was missing, and I will not feel bad, but I will definitely like something I want to explore for the future.
Yeah, yeah, of course. It'd be great for, you know, more people on the outside to learn from you as well, beyond just your students as well, so you can have like a bigger reach. You know, I know a lot of people would love to learn more from you as well. It's funny for me. I always kind of felt uncomfortable with social media sometimes as well. I don't. I have a hard time. Like when you show a technique, you almost kind of feel like you're bragging. I don't know.
Yeah,
I never feel super comfortable that I'll do it. I'm on it enough, but it is a challenge in the beginning for sure to feel comfortable with that. I don't.
very true.
Yeah. Was that something that you just never really wanted to get into, or you just were, like you said, you were so focused on just your in-person students?
Yeah, it's funny, Gianni, because like I was like actually thinking about this the other day because when I started jiu-jitsu, like because now everything is so like related to social media, and I feel like sometimes we even lose like the purpose of like why we started this and why I'm doing this, you know, like so because when I started jiu-jitsu, my main goal was like I want to be the best on the sport. I want to do like my the best as I can to go, you know, further and to reach my goals. But I feel like now a lot of people, they are kind of like losing that journey a little bit. You know, they want to get to the top, like they want to get to the top, like but not to the top. Like I want to, you know, be the best, but I want to be a known, like a, you know, like a
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
known in the
I
community,
know exactly what
you
you're
know.
saying. But
So
yeah,
it's kind of like, you know, it's like the wrong purpose, you know, if you have like a this. So like for me when I started, and maybe like that's why I was never that let's say technology savvy, but I was like involved with technology all my life, and I love like, you know, doing other things. Like I do like a lot of things, like let's say on the background of Brazil 21, like I just like doing like you know, many things, like from website to like a lot of things. And I'm always like you know, contributing like in a way I can to my company. But for myself was always like, you know, kind of like wanted to be on the background, so I never wanted to fully put myself there. Just like you said, I felt like I was almost like a bragging about myself, and I was like a never that person. Although
yeah,
like I'm super proud of like my accomplishments, and like now, you know, like as I'm older and I can think about my accomplishments, because I you know, being an athlete, I always like I put like a lot of pressure, and I never fully stop and thought about like a wow, you know, like I did like a lot to get here. And yeah, let me appreciate like this time for a little bit. So I feel like you know, like I just because I came from a different generation, I never fully took advantage of social media. And my purpose was like a, you know, I wanted to reach the top. I was not like a focused too much on, you know, showing my
yeah.
accomplishments, you know.
Yeah,
But I fully understand, like, and now I understand better, you know, it's not like a bragging about yourself. It's like a part of my job, and I'm getting a little better, but I still like, and I still need like a lot of work. So I like, I might have like, just like, a, you know, looking for a professional to help me a little more with this.
yeah, yeah. I could use something like that as well sometimes. It's I like that though. It was never so the competitions, it was never for like the popularity. It was never for the attention that you would get off of it. It was more for the goals that you had set. It was more like
Yes.
it was more personal than anything else. It wasn't about outside things that drove you. When you started, you know, and I want to hear a little bit about background, but have you always been that competitive person? Was that kind of always in you?
Yes, yes, always been like a. I have like a funny story about this. When I was like a, you know, like a kid, like so I was like playing like a boxing with my sister, my older sister, and she's like, you know, started like to get a little feisty with me. So I like, you know, like I did like a
Yeah.
punch, and I punched her like on her mouth, and like, you know, her tooth was like, you know, like the baby tooth was like coming out. So she's like, "Oh my God, you took my tooth off." But like, you know, it's funny. But we always like used to play. But I always like, you know, was always very competitive. So I always loved the competition. I always like to challenge myself in this way. So I was like always involved with sports. And when I found jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu was so, you know, like a sport that empowers you so much, because it's like a smaller person can go, you know, equal against someone bigger, and it's amazing. So like it was like a love at first sight. And so once I started jiu-jitsu was just like immediately I started like competing. So it wasn't like a right now, but took like a couple months, but it was something that it was like a natural for me. So always like a
Yeah.
competitive.
I'm always curious as well, like what was there a certain point that you had that made you, you know, stick with it? Because I could say like when I was a kid, I trained for maybe 2 years and I was just, you know, a hobbyist. You know, I would do it. I was 10 years old. I mean, who was really super dedicated at 10 years old, or knows they're going to do this for the rest of their life at 10 years old. Remember, I went to Worlds in 2004 out in Brazil. I didn't compete, but I was there to watch it, and I saw the final with Roger and Jacare, and I watched the whole tournament, and that was when I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. This is it.
Wow.
Did you kind of have like a moment like that, or like you said, was it just kind of like love at first sight when you first started training?
It's funny how you like it because you said like a 2004, and I feel like 2004 was actually the year that I got like really stuck with jiu-jitsu
Hmm.
because was when I started competing. 2002 was actually my first worlds that I competed, and I was a purple belt competing on the division purple, brown, and black all together
Okay.
because it was like
Yeah.
all women together. I remember at the time I didn't have any match. All my the girls on my division, they were brown, and I think there was one black belt, but
Hmm.
I did like a 4 matches and I was able to, to win. 2003, I got like my brown belt, and then 2004 was the first year that I fought as a black belt at the Worlds, and I won the division. And was the year that I really, because it was like many things happened. So my first professor, who was the person who first, let's say, he was like the person who introduced me to my professor, and like made this possible. So he made the connection, let's put this way. But there was a person at the time, Leca Vieira. She was the person at the time, to beat, that was like
Yeah.
the name to beat. And I remember her style of fighting. She was very aggressive. It was kind of like a love and hate. People used to love and hate her because she was very aggressive, and people the way she was fighting. Sometimes people were like, oh, she's a little bit dirty, because she will say something to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So at the time was really like a kind of like the person to look up to. So she was like a person that I look up to. And this person, Mestre Flavio, he passed away, but he was the first person said like, Hannette, one day as a white belt, like you hear someone say like, Hannette, one day, one day I'll see you be a world champion. I was like, really, Master? Do you think so? He's like, I'm sure you're going to be a world champion. And he said like, Hannette, I think you could win Leca. And I said like,
Yeah.
oh, Master, that's like, something crazy. Like, you're thinking that too much like ahead. And he's like, no, I think so. And then when I won in 2004, because I competed against Leca at this tournament, she was like my toughest match at this like a tournament. So I was able to win. But after the match, he came to me and he said like, I told you you could win. And that was like the year, like a Grandmaster Carson Gracie was watching my match. There was like a
Hmm.
big crowd on the background. So it's kind of like a crazy time. But I really felt that jiu-jitsu at the time, jiu-jitsu was something that will be part of my life forever. So
Yeah.
that was the time I felt like I want this in my life.
Yeah.
And, like in the other aspect, not like at the competitor side, jiu-jitsu helped me a lot in my life because I was kind of like, I had like a lot of energy, but I couldn't direct, my drive. And once I found jiu-jitsu and I found like my professor, it was kind of like the best connection because I had the drive, he had the direction. And when we got together, we were able to reach our goals, in such a perfect way. So,
Yeah.
so I think in 2004 was the year I felt, okay, that I want jiu-jitsu in my life. And I would say 2005 was the year that I put in practice because 2005 was the year that I had a regular job in Brazil and I had to make a living. I had to help my family. And I had to work with jiu-jitsu. I wanted jiu-jitsu in my life, but the pressure being trying to make a living, and that was the time you have to go to a school. And in Brazil is a little different because it's
Hmm.
harder if you want to live only with jiu-jitsu, of course. But I had a job, and I decided to quit my job, and everybody was like, "Oh, you crazy? You're going to quit your job?" And I said I wanted to do this because I wanted to go further, and I want to dedicate more time. And
Hmm.
at the time, even though I had the job, and my supervisor, she was going away, and she wanted me to take her place in the company. and I declined because I wanted to, you know, at least say I tried. I want to do this, and if I'm successful, that's good. If I'm not, like, you know, at least like I went there and I tried. So all worth it for sure.
Yeah.
It was a hard year because like that year, let's say they're just putting like a comparison, salary of like a $1,500 to $150, something
Yeah.
like it was like a something like, you know, like everybody was like, okay, guys, I know it's a hard time, but I know it's going to be, you know, it's going to be better soon. But I didn't know. I had no idea that was, you know, it was going to work, but it was the best decision of my life. So I think like those 2 years were, you know, the decisive years of my life, and just like making sure jiu-jitsu would be like a big part of my life. So
That that's awesome. I really like that, because that's such a at that time especially, that's a pretty bold risk to take, you know, for a number of reasons. Because one, like jiu-jitsu was not very professional at all then. You don't really
yes.
know. I don't know what I'd like to know, but like what were the opportunities at that point? And second of all, you know, I'm also curious to see like what women's jiu-jitsu was like at that time. You know, it's growing more today, but I can imagine back then it was really in its infancy stages, where it still had a lot of development. So you wonder what the opportunities are. So that's pretty like a pretty amazing that you took that chance. And you know, obviously it worked out well. It brought you to the U.S. and gave you a name, you know, a lot of other things, I'm sure. So what was I going to ask about that? So
Mhm.
so you say it was like once you got your black belt, that was like the time where, and that 2004. Let me 2004. You were a brown belt that time, correct?
Yes, so I got my brown belt I got my brown belt in 2002, end of 2002. So it was like a end of like a normally like the promotions like were end of the year. So
Okay.
December 2002 I got my brown belt, and then December 2003 I got my black belt.
Okay.
So
Okay.
like
So
a
2004.
1 year.
Okay. So 2004 was your first world as a black belt.
Yes.
And you said that was the time where you realized you wanted to do it for the rest of your life, and you wanted that to be your main priority. What did you envision your life being before that?
you know what? That's crazy because I always like I saw myself kind of like I always loved teaching. That was something like you know, I always loved the English. It's funny because since I was a kid, I always I loved the English. I used to be like a pretend I was like an English teacher at school, and like it was funny. But I end up like, you know, in the United States, and you know, having like a English as my passion of like a language. But so I love teaching, and I wanted to be like involved with sports, maybe like being like a, so I was like studying physical education in Brazil at the time, to become like a physical education teacher or like a personal trainer. So I was like a going that direction in my life anyway.
Hmm.
But I don't know, like I didn't have like a plan to like okay, I'm going to do exactly this. I was just kind of like a going with the flow, but taking the opportunities as life brought to me. So I felt like even though I had to stop jiu-jitsu for a little bit, it was always something that I wanted in my life, like an instinctively.
Yeah.
I wanted in my life, and I never wanted like a fully to let go. And in 2005, actually 2004, when I became a black belt, my career was a little faster just because of the competitions. And because at the time, we kind of like the black belt would have like a more, I would say like a power, put like this word, but that's not like the right word, but kind of like a more leverage if you want like a, let's say, to get a sponsorship or something like this. And we always like a very professional, but it was like a really, really hard to like, you know, let's say find like look for find like a sponsorship for women at the time. So we
Hmm.
had to kind of like work harder in this matter. But that was like a not like the motivation. I feel like the motivation was just okay, we want to do our part to get to the top. And I feel like that was my motivation to if that makes sense, Gianni. I don't know if like you understand what I'm like
Hmm.
trying to explain, but it's the motivation wasn't like a I had like the motivation that took me to take this path, make me like take this path was just I want to be the best. Is that
Yeah,
like
I understand. It wasn't, let me see if I can word it right. So you weren't like deterred by where women's jiu-jitsu was at that time and maybe the lack of opportunities, but you knew that you had a goal in it as well. That was just like, so kind of talking about like, social media presence. It wasn't about the outside stuff. It was still just about being able to accomplish goals. That was your on your main priority, not necessarily worrying about what the opportunities were out there.
exactly,
Right?
exactly. And even though like we didn't have like that much support, our goal is like through our job inside of the match, like going there competing in the highest level. I remember like at the time we're I would say ahead of our time because at the time, like the way we train, like nowadays everybody talk about, for example, drills. Everybody like they have like a routine of drills, and drills were something like that was like a part like of my routine, and still here, it's still like is a part of my routine. I
Mhm.
love drilling until like today. Like I didn't stop like doing this part, but drilling and like let's say intensifying the drills like I once like I was closer to the closer to the competitions, but we're very professionals in this matter, so we always like I thought about okay, our work inside of the match, our results will speak for ourselves and people
Mhm.
will eventually come. So we had like some sponsorships, but they were not enough to support our dreams, like
Yeah.
our lifestyle. So we had to, so I used to have like a small class of students before, like after like I quit my job, like I used to teach a little bit for the kids and just to have like some kind of income. And I had like this sponsorship. They will give me geese and I will sell geese. So that was pretty much how we work like the to just like maintain ourselves like financially. And we didn't like work with like a lot, but we made with a lot. Like we made like a lot with just like a little with we had.
Yeah.
So like
You do what you can with what you have, it sounds like.
exactly,
Instead
exactly.
instead of worrying about maybe not having as much resources that you would like, you took advantage of the things you did have and you're able to grow it into something bigger, right? Would you say?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, so we did have like a sponsorships, but they were not, enough. But nowadays it's like just much better to find supporters for the women community, and like it's a
Mhm.
big change from like what it was before and what it is now. We just definitely have like a much more support now.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely want to hear a little bit of like comparing, contrasting to what it was now to then. But I wanted to ask, like, so I guess teaching has always been kind of something in your routine and in your nature. It's not something that came new to you, would you say, right?
Yes, I always like I said, I always loved teaching, and I had this small group of kids that would train with me. I actually found a picture today that would fulfill my heart. Yes, but it was like definitely like a part of my routine.
Yeah.
Um, yes, and I feel like
So the,
like another way you also like learn jiu-jitsu too when you teach.
mm, yeah. I've been curious about that. I've been asking more people who own gyms and still compete as well. Sometimes I feel like people might look at that as a burden where they have multiple things to juggle between being able to compete and be a high level competitor while also owning a gym and teaching students. But it was kind of an interesting realization. And a lot of people have been telling me this where they feel like they figured out their game. They discovered the whys of why they do this in their game or why they do that through teaching more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't even have the opportunity to teach too much, but I remember sometimes I felt like I would be going through the motions in what I do and kind of not knowing why I did certain things.
Mm-hmm.
It just worked for me. But I remember I went on like this small seminar tour and I was teaching kind of the same thing over and over again, explaining it to students, going over details, answering their questions. And the more I was doing that, the more I was like, oh, I really understand why I do this and why the guy counters
Yes.
this way. Why, just so I understood the details of everything I was teaching and everything I would put into practice. So I would imagine, I guess you would agree that like
I
teaching
definitely
made
like
you much better.
definitely feel like when you teach, you refine the techniques. And even though like sometimes like you start with what you know, right? In the beginning, it's kind of like you're not comfortable of teaching maybe like everything, but you will start with what you know, and you figure out like what you know is just beyond what you thought you knew, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then with like those steps, I feel like you also like refine your technique, because when you have to teach someone else, like you said, you have to think about the whys. Oh yeah, like now I understand why I have to maybe like do this kind of grip instead of like doing this one for this kind of like a movement. And it's amazing how much I feel like I grew like so much like after I start teaching. Um, but and also that's how I think. If you have to work to support yourself, if you don't have a sponsorship that will fully pay for your lifestyle, and you have to support yourself, would you rather be in a company like just having to work for someone else, or like in a regular job? Maybe that's like what you would like to, but if you still on the mat dedicating your time of teaching, you're still learning, you're still doing like what you, let's say if you're athlete and you feel like you still compete, you still be learning and being on the mats, like I still evolved with jiu-jitsu. So I feel like it's less you gaining more than you losing. So
Yeah. Would you say that kind of like that kind of work ethic where you had to balance multiple things really helped you in the long run? Where I can imagine like maybe if someone was only training their entire career and then they got to a certain point in their career where all of a sudden they were balancing competing and teaching, where maybe that would be difficult. But since you kind of had to start from the beginning doing that, it was almost easier to accept having more things to balance and to work with.
yeah,
Would you
that
say
makes
that that was it was does that
that
make sense?
makes a
That
lot
was
of sense.
beneficial for you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. I definitely feel like it was beneficial, just because I felt like I was doing like a lot of things, but all related to one thing, like all
Yeah.
related to jiu-jitsu. So definitely like I felt like I was like, even though I was doing more, but like doing less, because you're doing like what you love to do. So
Yeah. I'm curious, how was it? How were like those early days competing out in Brazil? What was it like for women's jiu-jitsu at that point? And also, I find it crazy that like purple, brown, and black belts were together, because I always think like, man, I was so immature as a purple belt. I didn't know anything, nothing. When I think about it now, I knew nothing at that point. I can only imagine being in a division where you can have, all of them together. Was it difficult to like find tournaments sometimes, or was it what was the some of the challenges that came with those early days?
I feel like in the beginning, when you purple belt, as a purple belt, I felt like you don't have much to lose, because you're competing against
Mm.
people higher level. So I felt the responsibility started like a more responsibility as you're getting like your brown belt and your black belt, and that's why I think like a less people competed at the time. Like less women would register. Let's say a brown belt, she would like would maybe like she would not register because she didn't want to compete against a purple belt, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
at the time, because you like the bigger competitions were pretty much purple, brown, and black all together. So a lot of people, they didn't register, or they choose not to compete just because they want to be in their comfort zone. Same like when they didn't have like the masters division for women. A lot of women, they did not compete. And I remember having a conversation with like Andrea from IBJJF, just saying, I have my student here. She's master. I think she was master 2 at the time. She was a blue belt at the time. I said like she's competing on the adults division because it was a Pan American championship. She's competing
Yeah.
on the adult division because and I bet there's a lot of women same age, they love to compete together, but they don't have a division for them. So it
Yeah.
was it was
Yeah.
just like a hard to get women. And then once like they start just dividing the divisions, then we had more. I could see like a more women competing, especially on the purple belts and the brown belts. Like a black belts, like it took a little while, because it was just people were coming. There was like a couple black belts at the time, but not like many black belts. But as like they start putting one division for each belt. Definitely like more women competing and more people participating in the competition. So
Yeah. That's interesting. You know what's funny? I don't know if you I don't know if you ever compete against her. I used to train with this girl at Henzo's, Carolyn Stephenson.
yes, I competed
Um,
against her one time.
yeah, yeah,
Yes,
super nice. I
super
loved her,
nice.
but
Yes,
it's funny.
very nice.
I remember like the struggles at like especially the tournaments in the U.S. early on when IBJJF would be like New York Open, and there weren't too many opens, but it was just still kind of new here. There weren't many female black belts or brown belts, and she'd be like, "Oh, I'm only going to sign up if I see people in my division." And
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes she wouldn't sign up, and no one would sign up or whatever. I told her after a while, I'm like, I think you should just sign up, and I think that when they see a girl is going in there to sign up and compete, then more people will sign up. But if no one kind of takes that first shot, then no one is going to really go in there
Exactly.
because and so kind of like a little
Mm-hmm.
similar to what you're saying as well. I think the only way to bring the numbers is to kind of be the first one or just to kind of step in and do it, and then other people will follow, I feel.
Exactly, exactly. And that's why like this year I had like a plan before all this happened to do my first Master Worlds. I've been
Okay.
like I wanted to do because like here I feel like it's important to lead by example. And there's a lot of I feel like for women it's a little harder to deal with like the age and things like this. And but jiu-jitsu help us a lot immensely, just to stay young, to stay healthy. And I can say for myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I feel like a lot of women they just like I'm not going to compete because they don't want to go to the masters. And for me, like that's like a part of life. There's no other way
Yeah.
to go. You cannot go back.
Everyone's going in that direction. Everyone's going
Everybody's
in that
going in the
direction.
same direction, and the only thing you can go like that's something like I heard from someone. There's like two ways to get there. You can go like how you want to get there, right? You still want to be there standing. You don't want to be there like just like on your knees or like so we have to do our best to get there healthy, and jiu-jitsu help us like to stay healthy physically and mentally. But I feel like a lot of women, we just we don't want like so I want more women to get involved with the sport. So leading by example is always something. So I had this goal of like like doing this movement like let's go compete everybody master worlds.
Yeah.
But like for sure it's it's still going to happen. So not this year, but everything the right time. So next year
Yeah.
for sure. Next year.
That's awesome. I like that too because I always kind of worried about having the balance between competing and teaching. And I guess my issue would be kind of like what I was talking about before. I never really had to teach that much. So I feel like the responsibility when I start teaching would be tougher for me to compete because I've never had the ability to balance or never had really the opportunity to balance both. But I like that motivation as well. And a lot of people have been saying that. I've been talking to a lot of school owners as well, and they find it to be like they just want to find a way to motivate their students, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's what keeps them competing.
Exactly,
Uh,
exactly. And I know like you're going to love the feeling as much as you love the feeling of going there and competing. You're going to love the feeling of competing alongside your students, the people that prepared together with you. It's
yeah.
kind of like like an amazing feeling. I recently my one of my first black belts, like my first student here in the United States. She started in 2008, and she just it was her birthday 3 days ago. And I made this post about like how crazy is that? Like you become like a part of someone else's life. And just like I post like a picture of like our first competition together. It was like my first, like the first world. She was like a white belt, so she did the novice, and I did like the worlds. It was 2009, and we
Mm,
both had our gold medals. And it was just like like just this amazing feeling that you can't. It's like a double accomplishment.
yeah.
So I'm sure you're going to like it. That's something you enjoy very much for sure.
That's awesome. I'm committed to it now. I'm competing
Yeah.
forever. I'm never
Yeah.
gonna retire now.
Yeah, Megatol, man. Megatol is there to like prove
Oh, I
like
don't know if I
fresh.
can. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can
Man,
do that.
that's for sure.
That's
That's a lot of commitment. That
That's
guy, man.
impressive. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I start feeling it now, like to the point where I'm like, oh man, I shouldn't compete or train as much as I do because like I'm 28, but I feel things now. How like I can only imagine how he's feeling. Damn.
How long you have been doing jiu-jitsu, Gianni?
18 years now, almost 18
Wow,
years.
wow.
Yeah, this
That's a good time, man.
it's a good time. Yeah,
That's a great
good
time.
long time. So maybe, you know, I'm 28, but my body feels like 38. Sometimes it's not actual years. It's jujitsu years.
But especially
Um,
like, when you compete like at such a high level, like you do, all the time, you like that's something any athlete will have, right? Any
yeah,
athlete will deal with like some kind of like pain or some kind of like, I would not say like if like we treat our injuries, but that's something we kind of like I almost feel like in like we're so resistant to pain sometimes that sometimes we don't even. It's like you feel pain like from 1 to 10. What's your pain? It's like I don't know, maybe 2. So right, for some people it would be like a 10, for us it would be like a 2. So
I
I
know.
understand.
I can imagine. I wonder for you if it's weird during this time. I've been waking up and feeling like actually like healthy, and I'm not sore.
Right.
It's such a strange feeling. You
It's
know, I
like
don't know how to.
I'm not feeling my back today. What's wrong? Like, that's
Yeah,
something
yeah,
I might feel later. I don't know. But it is.
yeah.
It is.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let me see how much time we got. Oh, man, it's going fast. We got 12 minutes left. 12 minutes. Someone remind me because it'll get cut off. And I've had mid conversations with people and totally forgot about the
Oh
time.
my
And then
goodness, I
and then it just
bet.
cuts off, and it's kind of a bad way to end it. I want to at least be able to say goodbye. So
Of
I'm
course.
gonna keep an eye on that time. But I want to know a little bit about like your mindset going to competitions. Well, I'm always curious. Everyone has like a kind of a different approach. What are some of your focuses? For some people, they like to kind of keep in this bubble and just focus on themselves and focus on their technique. Some people like to look at what their opponents are doing. Some people really strategize. Where do you think you kind of fall in that whatever you want to call it, you know?
Mm-hmm. So I think like in my time there was like a not too much available content.
Uh,
Like if you to look for your opponent, you really have to go on the mat, and you kind of like a knew a little bit the people that you're going to compete against. In my case, and like like the people that will be like on top. Although like I didn't know like when it was like a purple, brown, black was a little bit different. So I was never a person. I was even like hearing someone's interview, like Bia Mesquita's interview, and I really connected with her because she said she hated like watching matches from like other people, and I was like, oh man, so it's not only me, because I felt like I felt so guilty. It's like everybody's like like watch this match, like this person, this guy, like I might face him, and I'm like whenever I start watching, I will get so like anxious. So I feel like everybody has a different way of like a learning, but for me was I always like to feel comfortable, like I feel ready. So that was like my way of like getting into my zone. So if I train hard, if I did my part, and believe me, like all the time I did like like I did my best, and every time when I would go to the competition, just felt I did my best to be here. I trained very hard. This is my time. So that was like kind of like my focus. So I never focused too much on the other person's game or what the
mhm.
of course like in some point you would know, and I feel like that was like a more my coach a part. He will like know the person's like, okay, Hannette, she's going to pull guard, so just be aware when she will give me the technical instructions, but to get into the zone, it's like if I knew I did my part, I would be like a very much confident, and was like a
Yeah.
sometimes for some people, because I heard this from someone else, she was like and I thought you were a completely different person, because every time when I see you at the tournament, you always like with this mean face. And for me, it was just like my way of like it was not being mean to anyone. It was just like just being hungry for that moment. Like I
Yeah.
was just like I didn't want anyone or anything to just take my focus away from like from what I wanted. And some, because it's like not in a bad way, but I feel like sometimes they want to greet you, they want to give their best, they want to. And I always like I almost like I feel like it's you sharing your energy. Jiu-jitsu is like
Hmm.
such a personal, intense, close sport. It's like for me, it's almost weird what I'm going to say, but it's like almost spiritual. You're very
Yeah.
connected to the other person. So I feel like, you giving your energy a little bit before the match. So it's kind of like a saving everything and just like a being on that zone. Not me with anyone else, because every time I was kind of like, angry, or it's something like something will go wrong. But the times I were like just in the zone where, I did my best. I trained hard for this. I feel ready. So those are the times like, everything was successful.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I like that. I can imagine I would actually probably like. Yeah, that's my real. How'd you get hair? How do you get hair in the
I'll give you
back?
all the tips later.
Yeah, well, I don't know. This is it. It's not gonna matter for me. It's not gonna matter for me. But anybody else out there that has long hair, maybe. Um, damn it, Eddie. Now I don't even know what I was gonna ask. Yeah, I can imagine during that time it was probably better to, for me, I would like this to not be on YouTube, because I feel like watching highlight videos now,
Right.
everyone looks so much better on highlight
Oh
videos
my
than they actually
goodness.
are. And when I was a
Yes.
kid, I would watch too many highlight videos. I would get all nervous and stuff like that. For me, I always felt like it was kind of, I'm sure you probably would agree, but I like to kind of see where my opponent would want to start, like whether he was more
Hmm.
of a guard player, more of a top player, and then just kind of like be able to observe that and kind of just go from there.
But you see, like that's a privilege from this time, because
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
right? Because
Absolutely.
like back in the days, and like, I was surprised. Like I had a conversation with Kira Grace, and she said she was like, when we fought the first time, she was like a recording, and to even like have a like a something to record the match at the time, like it was like a really crazy. You
Yeah.
find like a just rare people recording. So it was like a just like a now it's like a you can watch, but at the time, the way, and that's like the way for me like to work, even today, I feel like if you put your game first instead of like just wait for the person to, and this also gives you I feel like a better preparation, because you're going to be prepared for the top, for the bottom. You're not like
Yeah.
just like focusing one thing. You're focusing like, just like getting better overall, right?
Yeah. I feel like that's important, really important. What are some of the things from all your experience? If you were to pick like a few things that you find really important to pass to your students that are competing, what do you try to tell them? It doesn't have to be like maybe technique wise, but what are some things that you try to instill in them when they're going out to compete? I know it's a pretty general question, but if you
Mm-hmm.
have anything.
It's like for me, like for them, like to trust the process, because sometimes like, or like two things, because they with me, like, as they have, sometimes they have a tendency like, I have to prove something, I have to, do this for you, because you
Mm,
dedicate this time for me. So you're not competing for me, you're competing for you. So it's your experience, you don't have to prove me anything. Each one's experience is different. So because a lot of people, they kind of like and two, to trust the process. I would say like before, like they go to the competition, because sometimes like they want the results fast. I want to win this competition, and is the way I'm going to know this is working for me. And sometimes it's
yeah.
not like this. For each person is different. You might lose this one, but doesn't mean, and like, because jiu-jitsu is for the persistent ones. You cannot, like, it's not like an overnight. You're not going to be a master in the sport in 1 year, 2 years, even in 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So like, you've been doing jiu-jitsu for 18 years, and I bet you still like, oh man, I never thought about like, sometimes you get caught with like some, like, man, this grip, like,
That happens every day for me. Every day.
right. So it's amazing, but to trust the process, and to continue to not give up on the first, right? So
Yeah.
those, I
That that
think.
that's I like those a lot. And I actually meant to ask a little bit about how you would train before you compete. And not even to ask about like training specifically for competition, but did you ever your mindset was kind of like you always wanted to do everything you could in training? Or for me, my mindset was like sometimes I would overtrain. I know I would do
Mm-hmm.
more than I needed to, but that was more of like just for me to feel comfortable going into the competition, just so I can be like, okay, I did everything I could. I'm prepared because and there's no one that did more than me in my division. Was
Mm-hmm.
that kind of something for you as well? Like you felt
Yes.
like you had to put in that preparation to feel like to gain that confidence for the competition.
Yes, Jen, and this is like also like a big like a fight with my personal trainer, like because like I always think like but that's it. My training is just like this movement here, like because I feel like this is not like not even like making me tired. And he's
Let me
like,
do more. Yeah.
and he's like, Hannette, less is more sometimes. So that's a battle I have like with myself too. I always feel like I'm not doing enough, and this is like one of the reasons why when I'm training for a big competition I always like to stay out of social media, exactly because the reason you said, because we get caught like watching what the other person is doing. Is like, oh man, now I have to do this, I'm not doing enough. So, and that's like it comes like to what I tell like people, like you have to trust the process. And like I tell this to them, but I also have to like internalize like this thoughts too, like like not training like sometimes like and most of the times like less is more, because then like now I understand I have to be hungry for that moment. And if I'm overtraining, like I'm not going to give my 100% at the competition, right? So Jen doesn't
I
understand
don't.
that.
I don't understand less is
I
more.
completely understand you, Gianni. So no worries. Like we're together on this one, man.
Yeah. See, so Eddie, stop making fun of me. He's in the other room. Yeah, that's always been a struggle for me as well. So I was always curious about your approach there. I have to stop watching people as well. I used to be like, my idols were like the Mendes brothers and Cobrinha, and they would always post like how they would train. And I would be like, oh, I got to do this, and I don't think it didn't help. I definitely think it helped a lot. I think that's important. But you have to do what's best for you as well. You have to kind of follow your routine and not get so caught up in what other people are doing as well. You kind of got to be yourself and do what you feel like is best, right?
Yes. And also, Gianni, like everything in the right time. Because look, at the time, that was important to you. And that was like a big part of your training. But now as you evolve as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, jiu-jitsu athlete, you now understand, like, you kind of like evolving as well. So yes, you're going to watch, but you're going to watch the one that matters to you, right? You're not going to be like, dedicating like your focus like 100% to this, because now you want, you're kind of like, growing and evolving. So that's amazing.
Yeah,
Right?
man, I have so many things that I didn't even get to here, and we're like, it's giving me like a countdown for the last 2 minutes. But before it gets cut off early, I just want to say thank you for doing this.
Well,
I
thank
really
you.
appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. It's funny, like I see you at the tournaments, and like you said, and this has been like a common theme for all the conversations. Like I'm always like a little intimidated or a little worried about the conversation because every time we see each other, everyone is so serious, everyone is so
Yes.
focused that I'm like, I don't know, but I don't know if I'm gonna like this person. They're gonna like me, but then we talk and
Exactly.
we're out of the competition scene, and it's so much easier.
I had so much fun in this conversation, Gianni, and it was
Yeah,
a pleasure to, like, like you said, actually having the opportunity to talk to you a little bit. Thank you so much. And thank you for the
yeah,
people that were watching here.
yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Hey, you stay safe out there, okay?
You too, man. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. Hopefully, see you soon. We'll see
Bye
you
bye.
guys.
Bye
Take it
bye.
easy.